Alright guys, I have a nice little information-packed macro video guide. I get this question a lot whenever I stream, whenever I go live. Everyone's always asking me, what macros do you use, what macros do you recommend, and can you explain your macros? I have a macro page, a Pastebin, but I never really explain all my macros and why I do the things I do with them, so hopefully this video can give you some insight on why I macro a certain way, what works for me, and hopefully you can use these types of tips and information and you can apply it to yourself, make your own macros, or you can just copy mine if you want. But with that, I just want to give you the information about all my macros, everything about them, and I'll show some of the interesting macros. I'm not going to show all of them because I don't think I have to show all of them. A lot of them are really basic, but the ones that are noteworthy, I'll put them on the screen, do a little showcase with them. So let's get started. When it comes to my Dispel, Healing, Thorns macros, it's basically their specific name, so it's /cast bracket at specific name of the character or the party member I have, bracket spell, so in this case Thorns. And the reason why I do this is because it's easy for me to remember who is who in my party like this. You can do party 1, 2, 3. In my opinion, I feel like party 1, 2, 3 isn't that good for me because it's hard for me to remember which party member is 1, 2, or 3. So if you have that type of trouble like me, you can use a macro like this where you actually just put their specific name and the spell. I do the same with Thorns, Remove Corruption, aka Dispel. This is my Regrowth macro, Swiftman macro. So basically all my healing, Dispel, utility spells I put in this type of macro. For my focus macros, again, they're very simple. It's just /cast at focus, then the spell. So this is an example of a focus macro with Cyclone. So what focus macros do is it basically allows you to use your abilities in a more efficient way, right? So without a focus macro, if I wanted to Cyclone a target, so this is my target that I want to Cyclone, I have to click on the target, cast Cyclone manually. If I have a focus Cyclone macro, which is right here on Shift E, I don't have to click manually on this target. I can just press my focus Cyclone bind and I can just use my abilities in a more efficient way instead of doing things manually. And this can give you the edge whenever you play PvP, arena, because then you don't have to just kind of take the time to click something or target something, then go back to your original target. It's very inefficient and it can be slow and it could be very detrimental to your flow of your gameplay. So consider using focus macros. If you want, you can do something like this. I don't use these macros, but you can do at arena 1, 2, 3. The reason why I don't use arena 1, 2, 3 macros is because again, it's confusing for me. I don't know which arena target is 1, 2, or 3 all the time. I just like to have it, okay, this is my focus. I'm just gonna use my focus bind or my focus ability on this focus target. I don't have to think about, okay, is this arena 1, 2, 3, arena 3, 2, 1, whatever like that, right? This can be very useful though, having arena 1, 2, 3 macros, especially for Skull Bash, because then I have a regular Skull Bash bind, it's Z, but my focus Skull Bash is Shift Z plus Wild Charge in it. And what about the off target in 3v3? Well, for me, I actually manually target the second target that I'm not really focusing on. So I always have a focus target, which is usually the healer, and have my kill target. But the off target, I always manually clicking Skull Bash or kick. Having arena 1, 2, 3 in that situation can be very useful because you don't have to manually click, but I do it. Again, it's something I'm comfortable with doing. If you're not, consider using arena 1, 2, 3 macros. And here is the first macro that I think is really important to know, and it's a focus wild charge plus focus skull bash type of macro. And the reason why it is important is because what it does is basically adds a pseudo range to your skull bash because it's tied into wild charge, and wild charge and skull bash are not on the same global. So what this means is you can spam your focus skull bash plus wild charge macro and you'll leap to your target and pretty much mid leap animation, you'll just kick them, right? So basically you're doing like almost a mid-air kick while you're in your wild charge animation leap. So it's gonna look a little weird on this target dummy here, but if this was like an actual arena or PvP game, and it was like a cast, like a flash heal from a priest or something, or holy pally, I would be able to notice that, press my focus kick plus wild charger macro, and I would be able to kind of just kick them like almost in midair like that. The reason why that works is because there's a certain range threshold for Skull Bash, which is 13 yards, and wild charge goes beyond that. So you can actually kind of stand a bit farther and just wild charge and kick like that. So it's just a really good macro that goes hand in hand, and actually a lot of really experienced pharaohs and a lot of pharaohs actually use this macro, and it's very useful to get those like nice focus kicks. If you watch the AWC, you watch pretty much pro pharaoh druids play, they always go for these like leap kicks from range, and they're very useful to do because not a lot of people actually expect a pharaoh to leap kick you like that. Only people who are experienced in dealing with pharaohs who do this will expect it and will fake it, but most of the time not a lot of people will actually fake this type of kick because it's really unexpected, right? You're not going to expect a pharaoh to just leap towards you from 25 yards and just kick you. It's very uncommon, or not really something people are used to. So consider getting this macro. It's very good to have in the back pocket. So with the focus macros done, I want to go into the quality of life macros, basically macros that kind of just gets a lot of the tedious work out of your gameplay. One of them is this macro that incorporates Typhoon, Cancelaura, and Ursul's Vortex into one macro, put into one bind, and what it does is basically if you switch from Balance Affinity to Guardian Affinity, it will always just switch the ability based on which affinity you're going at. So if I'm Wrestle Affinity, Ursul's Vortex will be on my bars. If I go to Guardian Affinity, and Cancelaura will switch on my bars, and this is possible with this type of macro. So this gets rid of the tedious work from you just going to your bars or your spellbook, grabbing Ursul's Vortex, putting it on your bars manually. Same with Cancelaura or Typhoon. It's very annoying to do that, and it's tedious, and also it saves up keybinds because sometimes you might think, okay, since there's Ursul's Vortex, Typhoon, and Cancelaura, maybe I want 3 binds. No, just put them all in the same bind, put them all in this macro, and it'll just automatically switch for you. Also, you want to consider, or you should add an add cursor macro, basically for Ursul's Vortex, because without that add cursor, you would have to kind of click on the place where you want to put your Vortex on, but with an add cursor, it'll just basically just put it in one motion, right? So if I want to Ursul's here, I can just put my cursor there, press the bind, and it'll just go there without me having to click on that spot of the area. You can use the same type of macro for your trinkets. So if I want to, so for your trinket slots, this is important to know. This is item ID 14 and this is item slot ID 13. So I always put the trinket that I'm going to be using all the time, basically like my offensive trinkets like badge, emblem, or defensive trinkets, badge, emblem, insignia on item slot 13, and I make a macro that's basically a show tooltip, so no matter what trinket I use, it'll just show the tooltip of that specific trinket, and /use 13, so it'll use the trinket no matter what trinket on this item slot because it's in the item slot 13. And this basically gets rid of the tedious work. If you want to go emblem or battlemaster, you just switch it on your character panel and it will automatically switch on your action bar with this macro. And you don't have to think about it, or you don't have to always think about dragging your items onto your bar because again, that's really tedious and you can forget. It's just really good to have a macro like this to just keep things automatic and smooth. This is another really clutch macro you can use. So what this is it looks pretty complicated, right? But it's not. This is a Shadowmeld macro, and this is only applicable to Night because all the other races don't have Shadowmeld. So what this does is sometimes whenever you play Arena, right, and you Shadowmeld, your raid marker will fall off, and that can be really annoying because if your partners rely on raid markers to see where you are on the map, and your marker falls off because of Shadowmeld, that can be really bad, because what if you guys go in a different spot because you don't have a marker on yourself because it falls off during Shadowmeld. So what this does is when you press this button or this macro, we have this slash script set raid target and your specific character name and the raid marker icon, specific raid marker icon. I think number 2 is circle, for the orange circle for druids. So if I press this, you can see that I go in, the Shadowmeld macro works perfectly fine, right? Because I go in Shadowmeld and I hit stealth, and I also apply the raid icon to myself. And basically this kind of prevents the situation where your raid marker will fall off when you press Shadowmeld. And obviously if it falls off again randomly, you can just press the same button with the macro on your Shadowmeld cooldown and it'll put up the raid icon. It's very useful. Alright, so going on to my Prowl and Form macros, those are also very, very important. Alright, cool. So as you can see here, I have /cast !Prowl. And why do I have an exclamation point in front of Prowl? Well, this is basically because if you Prowl and you spam your Prowl button, you'll actually cancel your own Prowl while spamming the button. So if I'm pressing C, which is my Prowl button, see, I'm canceling it while spamming the button. And that's really bad because a lot of the time when you play WoW, you're always spamming your buttons. No one's like pressing their buttons like this, right? No one's just pressing their button like that, where it's just one tap, very slow. Everyone's just doing this. They're spamming their buttons because they want to just be as fast as possible and whatnot. So add this exclamation point in this macro in front of Prowl, and this is what this will do. I'm spamming the button, but I'm not coming out of Prowl during the spam. So that kind of solves that problem. And that can be really annoying if you don't have this macro, because what if you just want to go in stealth but you just break out of stealth? That's really bad. You can apply the same thing to Cancelform as well. So what happens when, again, if you spam your Cancelform, right, without this macro, this is what will happen. You will shift out in the global like this. See? I'm pressing F, which is my regular Cancelform button, and as I'm spamming F, I'm just shifting out, which sucks because you're always going to be spamming F to go back to Cancelform, and if just shifting out like that is just really awkward. If you put exclamation point Cancelform in a macro, you can spam F or your Cancelform bind, and you should be fine. You don't shift out during the global, and you don't have to deal with that bit of annoyance. You can apply this to your bear form and travel form. See, I have the same thing for bear form. You can put the same for travel form as well, if you want, which I recommend. Alright, so this is an optional type of macro that you could do and set up for your bars. Are Showtooltip macros, but don't actually have the ability that you're Showtooltipping in the macro. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So it's a Showtooltip Tiger's Fury macro, but I don't actually have this macro set to use Tiger's Fury. It's set to use Rip. And basically why I do this is I put multiple things on my bars of the same ability so I can see the cooldowns better. And that's pretty much the only reason why. And the abilities that I tie into those Showtooltip macros are abilities that I don't need to see the cooldown of. Like, for example, this Adaptive Swarm Showtooltip macro, Cyclone is on it, and E is my regular Cyclone bind. I don't need to see the cooldown of Cyclone, but I do need to see the cooldown of Adaptive Swarm because it's a very important offensive cooldown. So here, I'm allowed to still press Cyclone, but also I'm allowed to have the information of seeing my cooldowns better because I have multiple of them on the same like row or column pretty much on my action bars. You can consider using this type of Showtooltip macro. It's something you don't have to do, but it helps me. And if you're having trouble noticing your bind, you can consider doing multiple of the same bind. Basically how I follow is, if it's a big cooldown like Tiger Suri, Berserk, or like Adaptive Swarm, I'll just put the same ability on my bars. I don't like put very like non-important cooldowns like stealth or like dash or stampeding roar. Like I don't need to see multiple of those. They're not that important in my opinion. So consider doing that if you're having trouble kind of like seeing the cooldowns of your bars. Alright, so the final type of quality of life macro that's really important to have are Cancelora macros. And what those do is they basically cancel abilities on your character. So whenever you're fighting a mage, right, and you have a paladin, and he blessing or protections you, so you're fighting rogue mage, your paladin blessing or protections you on a kidney shot, a mage can spell steal that. So you don't want to give the mage a blessing of protection. So you need to cancel that. But how do I cancel a blessing of protection without manually just going up here and right clicking it off? Well, make a macro like this. A Cancelaura blessing of protection macro. So Alt G is my Cancelaura macro. And if I spam it, it's just going to take off the abilities that I set to cancel. So I have Blade Storm for my warrior, Blessing of Protection for Bobs and myself. I have Frenzy Regen. The reason why I have Frenzy Regen is because sometimes when Priest mind games you, you're really low and Frenzy's ticking and you don't want to have the Frenzy kill you. So I put Frenzy Regen Cancelaura in here just in case. And to just prove that this works, I will go into bear form, Frenzy Regen, Cancelaura, it's gone. And boom, just like that, one swoop. Another type of Cancelaura macro that you should have is a Cancelform macro, and this is very, very important because what this allows you to do is you can cancel aura, or not cancel aura, but cancel your form, any form in a CC, and this is really important because a lot of the time when I see beginner ferals or druids in general play, they're getting hibernated, they're getting scared beasted in CC, and I don't know if that's because they're inexperienced or they don't have this macro or both, but assuming that they don't have this macro, it's really important to have this macro because you can actually cancel form inside of your CC that you're in. So if I'm in a stun, I can just shift out with a Cancelform macro. And if someone's hibernating me in a stun, I can just shift out in the stun and I don't get hibernated or scare beasted. And you don't want to get hibernated or scare beasted majority of the time, or pretty much all the time. I also tie in intervene / wild charge macro back to my teammates. So what this does is, again, it's a Cancelform macro itself, but also a wild charge back to my teammates macro. So if I press the button once, I can Cancelform. If I press the button twice, and if this is my teammate, I can Cancelform, press it again, and I'll leap to my teammate. And in this example, it would be this person. And you're probably wondering, okay, so what is that going to trip me up if I just press it once? No, because how the inputs work is if you just press it once, you won't leap to your target automatically or at the same time. You'll just Cancelform. But if you press it twice and you're close to your friendly target, yeah, then you'll leap to your target. So you just got to make sure to remember that if you just need to Cancelform once, or if you just need to Cancelform, just press the button once. If you need to Cancelform and leap to your ally, press it twice. So that is something important to remember. And usually doesn't really get me tripped up. And if you kind of just follow that, you shouldn't really get tripped up as well. So yeah, I think those are all the macros that I want to cover in this video. Again, they're very, very basic and very simple. I don't really like to have intricate macros because for one reason, I don't know how to write them, and two, I don't really have the need for them because I like my simple macros. They're comfortable for me, and that's kind of what you want to think about when it comes to dealing with your UI, your binds, your add-ons, and macros. It's just what comforts you and what can efficiently work for you. Some of my macros may not please you or work for you because they may look inefficient, and I'm not saying these macros are completely efficient because there are probably other better ways you can go about this, but this is just comfortable for me, and this is what I've been playing with for multiple years. So I'm just going to stick with what I'm comfortable with, and that's what I highly advise you to do, is figure out what you're comfortable with and just stick to it. It's better to do that than just kind of constantly change and be uncomfortable and just be tripped up most of the time or all the time. So you can use this as a guide to helping you figure out your own macros. You can copy paste it if you want, but just make sure you're comfortable with it, you practice with it, you get it down. And once you do that, you should be good to go with the macros. I'll have a Pastebin below if you want to see my whole macro list, pretty much everything I use. So consider clicking that if you want to see that. But other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.